No. Okay, cut the chicken. That is exactly what we're gonna. Okay, let me know.
We're ready.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Lake Worth, City of Lake Worth Beach City Commission Budget Workshop, session number 3. Last City Hall Commission, Monday, August 5th, 2024. Vice Mayor Malega will pledge allegiance.
Can I do the roll call, please?
Oh. Okay. Not to the roll call.
Mayor Betty Resch,
Here.
Vice Mayor Sarah Maliga,
Present.
Commissioner Christopher McVoy,
Here.
Commissioner Mimi May,
Here.
Commissioner Reynaldo Diaz.
Here.
Thank you, sorry about that.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now, this is a continuation, I understand, of our capital improvement budget section. Am I correct?
That's correct, Madam Mayor. This basically, we are picking up where we left off at our budget workshop number 2 last week. And as you remember, we ran out of time, so being that it's going to take a while for us to implement the changes that we discussed, we thought it was necessary to kind of quickly wedge this one in there, so at least we can work it on. So
I have one thing before we start on this
Yes, ma'am.
part. We're going back to the fees for just a second, and I apologize, but it's been, I have had the suggestion that for the peer fees, where we raise it from $1 to $2, that we keep the $1 fee for residents at Lakewood Beach, so they show their ID. And I would like to, when we go together.
Deanna responded to my email about that.
Oh.
She can give us.
Anna McKay, Director of Legal Services. The peer fee increase was not on the fee schedule, so there was no. Did show a range that it could be at, we are not increasing it.
Could we, for people that don't live in the city?
Well, I think that would be on people, the staff who works at the pier to have to do that. And that's Mr. Lee Lipton's employee, so he would be
Yeah, all right, I just.
asking his employee to do it.
Okay, so we're not.
I did speak to Mr. Lipton as well, and there was no intention to.
Okay, okay, good, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Notice to the citizens who asked about that. It's good. Thank. So who wants to start?
I'll let Monica.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Commission. We are back for, as you mentioned, capital budget workshop. Can you hear me now? Yes.
Is the sound working? Because I couldn't hear the mayor very well, and I don't know if it's me.
No, it's not you. Everybody else will vote them.
All right.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now?
But I don't know if I hear you through this.
How about now? Shayla, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay, so we're back to discuss capital, focus on capital. Again, Monica McNaughton, Assistant Finance Director for Budget, and we are just trying to make sure we have the presentation queued up. I think you know who the budget team is, our director, Mr. Yannick, myself, Candace, Dale, our budget analyst, and Lucy Young, accountant too. And I just have a couple.
Just a second.
Okay, try to get it. Okay, technical difficulty, we're back on. Okay, so we just have a couple of updates related to the operating budget that we wanted to briefly discuss before we move to the capital, if that's okay with you all. We had a request for Lake Worth Playhouse marquee signage for $25,000. So that one, actually, I just want to back up one item. I know there was a request for Stantec modeling updates, and I wanted to acknowledge that we are going to include that in the first public hearing. That's going to take more time. We didn't want to rush through it. And so we'll provide those updates in the first public hearing. So again, the item that you brought forward, Commissioner Diaz, for the $25,000 for the Playhouse marquee signage, that would actually go into operating budget, and if we get consensus, that would be part of the City Commission general fund budget. because it's not a capital item, it's not a city-owned building, et cetera, it's not over $50,000. But if we're okay with that, then we can include that in the operating budget.
So it doesn't need like it's new, it doesn't need like a new categorization or anything, it's just lump it all in.
We would put it in the operating budget, not capitalized because it's not something that we own. And it'd be more similar to a donation that we'd be donating to have it completed or updated or repaired.
I just have a couple questions. What would the funding be for that? Out of what fund would that come?
It will come out of the general fund.
And it's 25,000, I mean, I love the theater, but if it's $25,000, does it make us not do something else? I mean, how does it affect the budget?
I would have
The
to
bottom line.
look at what we have in excess for general fund, let me just double check.
Can I make a recommendation that any funds that are left in the commission's discretionary funds be utilized first instead of the general?
No.
I understand we have plans, I think, but if nobody has plans, like I said, Commissioner McVoy hasn't spent any of his yet, and maybe he could,
At the end of the.
yeah, we have 2 weeks, I think.
I would like to have a standing objection to how these discretionary funds get talked about. Each commissioner can choose how they do them, and they should not be giving direction to other people.
It was a
how they-
suggestion, not direction.
I'm not comfortable with how that's been handled. I don't comment on other people's choices. I don't expect them to comment
Mr.
about.
McVoy, thank you.
Let me, I'll jump in.
Okay.
So, so the budget, we're gonna have to use the fund balance from general fund. As you recall, some of these projects that you approved on the second workshop, we're going to be using user fund balance from the general fund. So we have sufficient fund balance to take 25,000 at the next item as well, to move forward with it.
How much have we dipped into the reserves? Nobody's on pretty good shape anyway.
We had designated 134,000, around 135,000. We need to go back and just double check that before the.
Yes, so we're gonna have the 500 for the cemetery. The fence of the cemetery, for 500,000, and there was 150 for the pavilion project, the park project also, so. I wanna say that we're already at 700, 800 between, to use fund balance.
And so how much does that leave in the fund balance?
That would leave approximately 14 million, because we had excess revenues in 23 of approximately 4 to 5 million.
Okay.
They did well.
Oh, is it worthy? I mean, allegedly.
Yes, and we will still be within the target
Our-
fund balance.
Thank
As presented.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, can you speak into your mic? You're a little fuzzy on this end.
I'm sorry. That's weird, because usually there's something, okay, thank you. Mr. McVoy, is your,
Neon or LED?
it's up to, we're not talking about design, yeah.
Just curious if anything's known on that one.
Last I had a conversation with them, they were leaning towards LED just because of the expense of neon was significant because there was still hand blown and whatnot, but. Me, Commissioner May had her light on, so if she can go first, then I'll address.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner May.
No, actually, go ahead, because mine's about something else.
Oh. Okay, so just to close that out, fund balance we have, but then there's also things like we have 150 set aside for the pier, or the spillway park, which we had discussed is not gonna be probably anything near that, if at all, so like that could be available in the future, so there's things listed that might be available, but the whole reasoning on why I felt it's important for the city to invest in our theaters, because this year is its 100th year. I would like us to be more, let's just say, call it what it is, a better partner with the theater in terms of doing something event-wise, whatever it is, be a better partner. But also, more importantly, 25,000, it's a good amount of money, but it's also not a crazy amount of money. And what's more important, especially given the end result of the recent legislative session, I think it's important for us as a city to invest in our community theater because we do intend to have some pretty substantial legislative ask, and I think we need to really step up and say, this is also our community asset, and we're gonna put some of our own money into it. So, yeah, it's a donation, that's really the only way we can call it, but I tend to look at it considering the amount of people that our theater brings to our downtown, the dinner and a show things that they do. I like that I'm seeing the number of season ticket holders is increasing. And so I think this is a small but very meaningful and powerful step to just invest in our, so thank you.
And thank you. I have, thank you for bringing, for supporting it. I think if you, I would think you have consensus for that to do that. And obviously, we're not the designers.
Yeah.
This May,
My question is actually for, Director McKay. Can you just answer one quick question on page 5, where of the, operating budget? And it's basically, we have the Easter evenings on the app, sponsorship, Taco Fiesta, I know moved, but 4th of July, Little Scream, Taco Fiesta again, but there's no funding for it in FY25.
good question.
And I don't want to not fund all of those events. In fact, I like to fund more events. if We could.
We just grouped together.
But so under that 60 grand,
Yes.
but the 60 grand for art festival.
All right, let me just street view.
No, the street painting festival's up here at the top at 50 grand. Oh, maybe 60 for the other.
Yes, for all of them.
Okay.
Let me break it down.
Now, can I ask you specifically about evenings on the app? Does that, support that, event?
So I have to follow up on what if there's budgeting from the previous year. This budget did come over from 2023, so we did follow through on that. And we do have a new events team, so I can follow up and see if that would be something.
Okay,
Yeah, none of them seem to be funded for this year.
well, that's what I was concerned about.
That's a good point.
But they are funded, so it is the
They're funded.
60,000 down at the bottom. I guess maybe we need to adjust that.
It's not in the right line item.
It's not the right line item. So the 60 is for all of them.
So 60 right here.
The bottom.
Oh, they didn't.
So
Yeah.
not under art festival,
That's
but
right.
city yearly festivals.
Yeah, but we will update that.
All right, and I don't see anything for St. Patrick's Day.
That's not a city event. That's,
It hasn't been a city letter, from my understanding.
Okay,
could be.
I mean, it could be.
Well, let's get the new team together.
If there's an interest, we can definitely discuss that.
Okay.
Put a post-it note on that, one. We'll talk about it later.
Anything else?
No, that is one, that just seems weird that there's a big gap.
Yes, so I will follow up with my colleagues in finance and.
Okay, thank you. I mean, it doesn't have to be itemized out for me. I mean, I think it actually makes sense not to, because then you guys as a team can figure out where you want to put all that.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to make sure it was labeled correctly.
Sure, we can up that.
Okay, thank you.
for bringing that up.
It looks like 4th of July celebration is in there twice. That might be when they have to look at that. We'll just look at it all, yeah, we'll just look at it all together and see what's. We'll get together.
Get it together. Get it together. I have a random question. On the $50,000 for the trees that we set aside for trees, someone pointed out that somehow $450 of it had been spent on the trees. I'm curious where. And I don't even have a page to refer you to. Yeah, remember the 25 from the tree fund and then we
Right.
came to that $50,000 on the line, I was at 50,000 and then minus $450. And someone noticed it and said, did we buy a tree?
We can follow up. We can research that and check.
Oh, yeah, you don't have to, that's not public, just, you know, you can
We
get
got the
back to
tree
me.
trust, I think it was a tree trust fund, or was it?
Yeah. Yeah. You know,
So you just want to know the balance of what was spent.
yeah, what we spent $450 on.
Thank you. All right, next update is the library endowment $50,000 request. I wanted to get more clarification on this one, Commissioner Diaz. So we have, I just want to share, we have in the Simpkin Trust, there's about 117,000. And then in the library trust, there's about 53,000, I believe. So both of those funds could potentially be used towards that library endowment that you're requesting, unless you had something different in mind.
That's something to for sure talk about. The Simkin Trust is separate. The one that I brought up, I don't know if Cindy is available or if McKay might be. There's a community foundation, which is now an investment. So you're saying we might have money available from Simkin and others to fully fund the community?
Yes, I think Cindy researched it. I think she looked on their website, we need 50,000.
Yeah,
So it sounds like we probably need an agreement with that organization to say they're holding the endowment for us. And then we would donate the 50,000 and they want an agreement and figure out what they would use that for.
yeah, I mean, I think whichever is the path to endowment, because right now it's just an investment account, right? And then once it reaches 100, it gets triggered as an endowment, and so the library will be able to, you know, it's an endowment, so they'll be able to skim off, I forget what it is, a few thousand every year,
Oh,
right? Something like that,
I
I'm not sure, but yeah, whatever gets us to the path of making that to an endowment would be great.
Okay, fine.
Do we have consensus for that one, which I just need to confirm, I thought what Cindy sent me, said that it was 50,000.
Yeah.
I'll just, if it's 50,000 for the endowment, then we have the money to do it
Yeah.
now, we have like 53, if it's 100, we have to pull funds together, like, again, from a.
It is 50. So
It is
just to backtrack, it seems like ages ago, I want to say at least a year ago, we had a meeting with the library advisory board and people from Community Foundation gave a presentation. Basically, the conversation was, what grants can we do for a library? And out of that conversation, they said, well, you know, a good thing that could be done is this potential of an endowment, and then it started. So right now it's at 50,000, and so it needs about 50,000 to reach the 100. So if we have that, that'd be amazing.
So to clarify, they already have an endowment in place for us?
My understanding is it's not an endowment. It's an investment account that they're fundraising and slowly building up. And then once it gets to that point, it'll be created at some point. She'll have the details. I know, you know, if you have any. Yeah. Okay.
We'll get with you, how about that?
Yeah,
I
with
think
me.
Cindy wasn't quite sure, and I just want to make sure I wasn't
Okay.
sure as well, and I want to make sure we have whatever we need. And then if we have consensus to do
Yeah.
that, then we can definitely.
Cindy's a good one. And then also, Friends of the Library also had a big part in doing it. So yeah, we can follow up on that.
Do you have enough consensus?
Do we
to
have
move forward?
consensus? Do we have consensus? Okay. And we'll follow that, we'll circle back with you, Commissioner Diaz, to make sure we have that, figured out. We'll probably include Cindy and Tiana and have a quick discussion. Cindy was researching it, so she did follow up on that. Okay, thank you. Next item I have is a supplemental item for electric customer service positions. So I missed including this in the budget. So I wanted to make sure, electric has their position included in there. It's in your packet. It's behind the CIP. It's a customer service supervisor, and this will help support the changes that are happening, with that, contract, to be able to do necessary training. And it's a full-time associate. They have the funds available. You can see on the first page, the total cost is $94,106 with benefits, which would allow them to still have a surplus after their implementation of their, class and comp study of around $93,000. And so I just wanted to get consensus on, it's this page right here.
Attached all these little sheets. From today's stuff?
Yes. It's in the back of the CIP, it's the very last.
Can I just ask a quick question, Madam Mayor?
It's the back of this.
It's this first page here. So this first page shows the item, it shows the amount, and then the second page is a supplemental request to validate and back it up, which is what we require from these positions.
Can we just make sure that Santax puts this in there?
Yes, we will. Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
And this is requested by the electric.
Yes.
And what kind of, I wonder what kind of interaction this will promote between, the calls into the call center and people actually in the whiteboard, because, I don't know what this,
I cannot speak on that.
yeah. I mean, I trust Mr.
We can definitely follow up with the.
And this is the first we've seen this, right?
Yes, that's what I missed it, including in the budget, so I want to make sure they still get their position, but they had it requested on time. So We can definitely follow up on those questions if you're okay with us circling back to get the, and include it in the budget and then follow up any
Sure.
questions you have on what specifically they'd be doing. I'll get with the customer service area in Annette. She's able to explain that. And she has been able to explain that.
So we're gonna have a consensus to have this.
Yes, thanks.
Consensus?
Thank you. And I will make sure we circle back with, you're just looking to see what interaction.
Yeah, how's this gonna improve our customer service, please?
I will get this to the electric.
John,
Yep.
thank you.
Yes, Madam Mayor, hey Shayla, is Ed Liberty online? He's supposed to be on Zoom.
He is.
Is he able to answer this question since we're discussing one of his positions?
I can take a try at it, and then that would be the best, but this is a position related to customer service, as you mentioned, and it would help improve the customer service function. We need another supervisor in that shop to help carry some of the work and better supervise the folks taking phone calls, whether they be our direct employees or the employees of the call center operator.
Thank you.
And thank you for staying home, Ed. You sound fantastic.
Yes, I'm working on my singing voice, and it's not going well.
Get better.
Well, take care of yourself.
A far cry from the Velvet Frog,
Yeah.
but thank you.
Yeah, consensus to, thank you, Mr. Liberty. You have consensus to approve adding this one in the budget?
Yes, we can do that, right?
Thank you. All right, we're moving along, golf signage. So this one was a request to have golf signage added into the capital. Tiana, Director McKay is still getting some quote and information on this. The estimate's coming in around 10,000, so again, it wouldn't be a capital item. But we'll have an update when we get to the first public hearing. Hopefully we'll have that included and it will go in the operating budget. So I just wanted to give you that update.
Mr. Brown,
Did want to say, obviously, this is the signage that the vice mayor brought up as you're coming west across the bridge. Right there.
right. Like,
When I was having a conversation with Tiana, the type of sign that we go with is obviously going to affect that pricing. There is someone that we're already dealing with, so overall, we'd like to get a couple options that we could actually present, because that number could be triple, quadruple, what we're currently looking at, depending on what, do you want backlit, like what, how fancy you want it. But I mean, it is kind of our entry level, the city
Oh, yeah.
coming from A1A.
Absolutely.
So probably don't want to go with just a bland type of thing. So again, it'd be nice to provide some options, so we kind of get a better idea of what everyone's really looking to do. So that number is kind of placeholder. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
While we're on the subject of signage on the other side of the bridge, I remember about 3 years ago, we started talking with Mr. Lipton and we started talking with the cities about having having a sign that advertises as people drive by A1A, that they would know there's a Kilburns there and the Bennies and everything. We are so good at hiding our assets, and I would like to really see if we can do that. And we've been talking for a really long time, and nothing's happened, and I'm just really frustrated about it because I think we're passing up an opportunity there, again, to market ourselves, and if the signs to have that brand thing that we're gonna be doing, or we do. I would like to see that included in this budget.
How would
now.
you feel if I told you that's already underway?
I'm sorry?
How would you feel if I'd said that was already underway?
No.
Come on.
It's not CIP.
It's unfunded, yeah, we'll do that.
Yes, so the same sign company, we're working together on this, organizing, working back and forth with the company. And it is actively moving. I've been speaking with each tenants. They are understanding that it's coming. We are moving it as fast as we can. It's done. And we're actually doing a FaceTime with them to go through the space and we want. So it is.
Well.
The sign of the beach.
Yeah, so we had some money set aside for that, depending on what that ultimate, we've seen a couple of the, I guess, the initial design.
Right.
Which I guess are kind of modifying a little bit of. So I remember the amount was 21. It was right around 20,000, just over 20,000.
My understanding is that the Mercians up there were willing to contribute towards that. Is that still good? Or have they just lost patience with us?
No, there's the conversation is ongoing with them. They'd like to see some design, so that's what we're working on right now, getting a couple different options. I know they want to be here and being able to show that designers are.
Right. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
so it's been going, so you're aware, that was one of those items that, as you said, it kind of been sitting for a little while. Obviously in a transition in leadership in that department. That's one of the things that was picked up, that had been put down, so catching up with some of the things that had kind of been on the back burner. But as she's saying, she has been working with, this particular person who,
As long as also they're aware, because I know that's one of the
Yes.
frustrations they
And
had is.
and that was the other thing that we picked up that hadn't been happening before, was having these consistent meetings with all of the tenants up there. That had not happened. So we've had multiple of those meetings today, and we're gonna continue those,
Thank
to
you.
make sure that, and it should have been happening all.
I'm so happy to see that, because we used to have sign. Mr. Diaz, you're on.
Oh, I was just gonna, in that same theme, I was gonna bring up another low hanging fruit. I don't know how effective these are, but there's those, there's ground, like there's state signs, there's brown signs that says municipal beach this way that you can get for miles along I-95. That might be another like low hanging fruit we could add to that. That's what I asked from.
From the other DOT. Thank you. We need to talk to you, because they're getting with nothing.
Okay.
You're dismissed.
Thank you. Probably get this.
Making it very judicial. I think it's time we start talking to DOT about the landscaping at 6th Avenue South. They're really making progress, and I would hate to be left behind sparsely landscaped. Okay, so what's up?
We have one more item and then we'll roll into the CIP. This kind of takes us to the CIP. It's the water tower discussion. So there were, basically requests and updates and some challenges with, basically we have to have the water tower either demolished or repaired. And so we wanted to start that discussion and get some direction, and I believe Ron is here to lead us through that discussion, and then we're going to talk about, the water projects as it relates to CIP anyway, so we'll kind of roll straight into that. Hello.
Wonderful.
Yes, it's one of the, it's the water tower that is not painted, well, the empty one, it's.
So, Juanita, Water Utilities. So as you are aware, we are discussing the North Booster Station water tower, which is at those ball fields. I believe it's 22nd North. The water tower is not and has not been operational for quite a while now. And the reason for that is it worsens our water quality. So when we pump a bunch of water up there and let it sit in the hot sun and it gets old and the residuals dissipate and then bring it back down, it's worsening the water quality. We do not have any need for that storage, and we do not need any hydrostatic pressure from that water tower. So we do not use it. That is kind of the preface to this conversation.
Okay, how much is it to take it down?
To take it down, it is $235,000. And the only other option that we really have on the table right now is to restore it, essentially creating art.
A landmark,
Yeah.
right.
To restore it, the current cost we have, which is just part of our continuing contract with the tank maintenance company. Renovating it and painting it white is $242,849. However, there have been problems with it lately where it's not at risk of, toppling over anytime soon, but components on it have begun to rust off. And that's dangerous. If something were to, rust and fall and catch a wind gust, like that's very dangerous. So that cost of $242,849 does not include the repair of these broken components. It would just be sandblasting it and painting it white. And then also that would be a recurring cost as needed due to wear and tear. The typical lifespan, I'm sure you guys are familiar with, painting water towers is kind of like 10 to 20 years, depending on different factors. But another factor to consider is that the tank is required to be full in the event of a storm. So to permanently address that, we had considered, maybe we could fill it with flowable fill, just kind of like concrete, if we're really dead set on creating a landmark out of this. My estimate of that would probably be around $200,000 because the cost of concrete, as well as typically when you're putting concrete, you're laying it down on the ground, not pumping it all the way up into the air. The painting of the city logo is, or specialty painting, whatever, would be moving forward with is probably around $20,000. And then there are annual fees associated with inspection and washouts, which would be about $10,000 a year moving forward. If it is not obvious, the preference of the water utilities department is to demolish it because we do not want to continue to have to maintain an asset that we don't use. So that is kind of the rundown of the water tower situation.
Vice Mayor. Melinda.
So is there any way we could get like one of those great movie companies to come here and blow it up for us for free, like part of the movie?
William had brought that up the other day.
I mean, isn't that, or like a demo crew, or I mentioned the fire department, but Mr. Perry's like, nope, the fire department.
They don't
have
want
no part in that.
No.
And I completely agree with you. I'm not in favor of just keeping something because it's gonna be a beacon. We already have a beautiful one on 95. So I completely agree with demoing it, but if we could find a way that we didn't have to pay for it safely and
Or still the metal.
if we could make a moment out of
You
it.
should contact the Palm Beach County Film Commission, so they might be able to put out there as like, oh, we have this availability or option to have a water tower blown up for a movie or a TV show, and they could probably solicit and find out somebody who might want to do that. Or there may be some really rich person who wants to celebrate the election and they'll blow it up for us, depending on what's paying on the outside. There are a number of options, but I'll work with Vaughn on that.
Yeah, I just think it'd be cool if we could put it out to bid. I mean, if nothing happens, nothing happens, but wouldn't that be cool if somebody did take us up and say, yeah, we'll do it, and then we've just saved some money and we might be in a movie.
We can certainly check. I will need help on, the avenues to approach, how to do that, but, if not, we have a continuing contract with somebody who will do it for $235,000.
So should, I was just gonna ask, should we do a placeholder for that?
Well,
What
what's
is
the time?
budget?
You're talking about things falling off of it, which makes me nervous.
So
What's our time frame for those become dangerous?
I guess in the traditional sense, this will not be capital improvement project for next fiscal year. This is, if you approve it, we would like to do it as soon as
Okay.
possible. And the money that had been set aside in operations for the sandblasting and painting it white could be used immediately
Oh.
to get started.
I think Ms. May was. Yes.
My only question is, because I agree, why maintain a burden? But that property and that area of infrastructure, like, do you need that for anything else, or do you just like cap it? And then that can be park?
The demolition
It's-
cost does not include taking away the concrete slab. So
Okay.
that would be an additional expense to look at something like that. But it is right at our booster pump station, kind of an industrial thing. I don't know if that's necessarily attractive for a park.
But you
But
might
it's
have a
something that
use,
could be looked at.
but you might have a use for it, basically. It's not just gonna be fenced off powder concrete. You potentially might be able to use this area for something.
Beekeeping.
No.
Sorry, that just took me out of it. I'm trying to read this. But yes, we will likely have something to
Okay.
prepare.
Okay.
Ms. May, did you?
No, I was just gonna chime in that I agree. Let's get rid of it.
It's a shame because it would be another opportunity for some.
Wouldn't it be cool though if we could keep the top of it, flip it upside down and turn it into a skateboard? That's what I was saying.
Or a swimming pool.
Just kidding.
Period.
You don't need to flip them. You can climb into those things.
You
Somebody
can
would wanna.
Okay, all right, let's keep going. So I think we have consensus to use the money to demolish.
And first we will check if anybody wants to
Right.
blow it up.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
But somebody who has authority to blow something up, we don't just vote random people.
Oh, no, stop, no. Hey, it's $50,000.
Since it is in District Two, a little bit of advance notice. Since it is in District Two, a little bit of advance notice when you get around to blowing it up, you know. Let our people know.
I love to watch demolitions, really.
Okay, what's up? We are actually probably gonna call Director Hayek right back because we're going to move right into the water discussion. I just want to note that that item that you mentioned will be operating because it's not, it won't be a capital asset, so we wouldn't put it in our capital budget.
And improvement would be kind of a stretch of the word.
Yes, probably. You can't capitalize something that we're doing.
We can have an event, you know, they did that in West Palm, they demolished it.
Really?
High rise, oh yeah, you could,
Oh, I did see that.
let's make a party, you know,
Yes, we like to have events here.
sell pieces of it.
Oh, now you're talking our language. Okay, so we are going to kind of pick up where we left off. We went through all the CIP projects when we were together last week, and we wanted to focus on revisiting the water fund, the local sewer, mainly things that relate to ARPA, because that seems to be the area where, for one, we need some key decisions made. And so we'd like to start the discussion, see what questions you have. Again, we have Director Hayek here. As you recall, the projects, they start on page 3 of your capital handout. That's the first page or booklet of your items that you received today. And the items that are currently anticipated as ARPA or provided as recommendations are the water distribution mains. I'm sorry, I can't see. Hang on one second. Let me just go along with that. Actually, it's not the water distribution, it's the dual zone monitoring well. And then the monitoring well 9 replacement. So those are the first 2 items.
And then there are,
Yes, those are recommended.
and that's restricted, coming out of restricted.
That would be out of restricted, yes. So in order to move those forward, we would need consensus to do so.
What about next page?
The next page, the local sewer. Yes, as you can see, yes, the lift stations 5, 6, 13, 15, 18, 19, and 25 improvements. 2.59 for restricted ARPA. And then that would actually, I believe, be everything related to ARPA. Yes.
Yeah, so that's everything related to all of the, there was another addition that we had on here, for the roadway infrastructure
Oh,
updates.
yes.
292.
Ms. May has a question.
For Director Ada. Okay, remember, I know nothing about water. So, but I am getting calls about, excessive hydrant flushing in District 3. Does any of this help with that?
Right now, we are flushing the hydrants for a 3-week period, which is an annual chlorine burn.
Okay,
So to give a very general overview of why that's necessary, and it has improved because I have learned that we used to do biannual hydrant flushing. When you have, I believe it's ammonia in the water distribution system, there is kind of a biofilm on the inside of pipes that is harmless to humans, but feeds on ammonia. And so when we use chloramine, which is the usual disinfectant throughout the year, the ammonia is allowed to continue into the system, and that biofilm kind of feeds off of it. And the yearly chlorine burn is a maintenance event. It goes on for 3 weeks where we are using free chlorine as a disinfectant rather than chloramine. And that is because the free chlorine will kill that. The hydrant flushing is to scour the pipes, because once you open up a hydrant, the water is going fast enough through the pipes to get that out of there.
okay, so, because I thought it had something to do with the fact that it was like the end of the line, like in College Park, and the water pressure wasn't enough
That,
to keep it going at some point.
that is true, and that's a maintenance event as well, but it's not as, like, the reason it's happening right now, and I'm assuming the reason you're getting a lot of phone calls is because this is just a 3-week
Like
period
all day, every day?
when we are flushing hydrants all the time. So all around the city, you know, it's strategically done so that we kind of work our way out from the treatment plant, essentially trying to pull that chlorine through the pipes and then get it to the edges of the system and clean everything out
Is it done during the day or the night?
during the day.
And what's the reason for that? Why day, not night? Just because people
Our
are at
staff
work in
works.
case something
Yeah.
happens? Okay. I was just thinking, no one's showering in the middle of the night or doing laundry,
Oh.
and that's the complaint, like when it's flowing full blast. They don't have the water pressure that they need in their house to do the things that they need to do.
Right.
That's why I was thinking, well, if we could do it at night, they would, but that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just because our staff, doesn't typically work.
No, I completely understand. I didn't know it had to be like manned.
Yeah,
Okay.
it does.
Legit question.
Yeah.
I'll just open it up, we'll come back tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, if it's just flowing.
It's, believe it or not, it's like timed, so it's being monitored and if the site is left by our crew while it's flushing, it's probably just to go check on another flushing site or open another one and then come back and close.
Oh, it's monitored. that closely.
Yeah.
Okay,
But, so that is probably, like I said, the reason you're getting an increased number of calls now.
Now.
Because this is like something that we're probably on the last week, I believe.
yeah.
But you're also correct that sometimes we do flush hydrants intermittently that are at the end of the system. Because when you get as to the far points away from the treatment plant, when we are using chloramine as a disinfectant, you have what are considered residuals. So you want a bit of that chloramine to remain in the water all the way, but it gets eaten, so to speak,
By the
while it's
film.
on its way out. And as the water just like kind of ages and is stagnant or anything like that. So in areas where you do have a lot of stagnant water or in the very far points from the water treatment plant, you have low residuals, which in turn is considered lessened water quality. So that is more of a maintenance event of, we just want to make sure that the residuals are being kind of drawn out to those areas, but it's definitely not as frequent for flushing as flushing during the burn.
Okay, so we've got a 3-week burn and then the residual flushing, how often does that happen?
I would have to get back to you on that because I don't know that we have any specific scheduling for that. I think it's just kind of, monitoring what's going on and flushing is needed.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, is it twice a year, once a week? I don't know.
In areas like College Park, because that is a very far point, from the treatment plant, and also it's all residential, so there's no like high users out there. High water users actually help the residuals
That would
because
make sense, yeah.
they're bringing more water to the area. So I would consider College Park probably the likeliest candidate to have their hydrants flushed. But I would say it's more often than twice a year, but I can get back to you
Okay.
on, any type of scheduling that they have for that.
Because the water system ends up there, it doesn't move around, right? It's a closed.
Right, and that's kind of another issue is you want everything to loop because, the pressure is coming
Any
from both
plans on
sides.
doing that? Can we do that?
Well, I think the majority of College Park is looped. It's just because
With
since
North
it's a
Lakeside.
residential area, there's not, active users pulling from the loop, so it's not really moving.
Like, I was told by a resident up there when I was walking around, that up there, like North Lakeside, that they felt that they were at the end of something somehow.
Don Duke too. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we try to avoid having dead ends in the system because that's when you get those problems. But so I think with College Park, everything is looped properly the way that it should be. It's just very far from the treatment
Okay,
plant.
so none of this affects that. That is it is what it is situation.
That
For now.
is what it is situation.
Okay.
We are currently working with a consultant on a nitrification action plan, which is essentially the first step is unfortunately a flushing plan, but then it's more of a comprehensive approach of what can we do to reduce these, residuals in the water that are making it so we lose the residuals we want, and have to flush those far out areas.
Okay, awesome. Thank
It's
you.
like hardening the arteries, you gotta flush out the.
I know it's like a stint.
Right, Mr. Boy, and then, Mr. Lem Milligan.
Okay, so the way I see this is we're now talking about how we're going to allocate the remaining about 3.7 million of ARPA funds. And that's, I think, an important discussion to the community. I'll preface it by saying I'm a hydrologist, so I'm quite sympathetic to water issues. And trying to get ahead of those or stay on top of them or whatever needs doing. That said, I also want to thank Vice Mayor Malago, who has been quite consistent over a number of meetings when we've discussed budget, and saying that, well, I don't know if I want to support $2 million out of the ARPA funding for social services, but I might consider 1 million. So thank you for that support. This is the time, I think, where we have to recognize that unfortunately the money isn't of the type that you can spend twice. So if we want to spend $1 million or set aside $1 million or 2 million or something in between that toward an issue that we have had a lot of concern in the community, basically providing some sort of relief from the issues that come with a large homeless population. Today's the time that we got to do that. And that's not a pleasant situation to have to decide, well, what's more important, or what do we care more about, or what do we see as more urgent? And I don't think there are any obvious, right answers one way or the other. I do see that a couple of observations. One is that all of the items that are on, basically everything that's left, the 3.7 million would be going to the water, either sewer or water fund. They're all marked as M, meaning medium priority, meaning sky isn't falling, they're not H's. They're clearly serious things that, if we had the money, we would definitely do those things if there was no other constraint on it. But they are not H's, they're M's, so that's something. And the other observation I would make, and I talked with staff about it, and I think it's correct. If we had not had a pandemic, we would not have received any of this, and we would have come up with some way of dealing with these water expenses. I don't know what it is. I don't know if anybody else knows what it is either, but this is, in a sense, an opportunistic use of the money for the water things. Doesn't mean it's bad. Like I say, I'm a hydrologist. I support these sorts of things, both coming and going, lift stations and wells. But we have said, the community has spoken many times to us over the last several years, hey, we have a big problem with the homeless. It affects our businesses. It affects our downtown. It affects our parks, whatever. And we've said, well, maybe we ought to, as a city, do something about that. I've had discussions with our finance staff, and one of the clear concerns that both staff and our commission has raised is, hey, all these discussions are wonderful. We have to have the money bolted down by the 31st of December of this year. And if we don't have a solid plan in place right now, we better have a strategy that has something bolted down by the 31st. What I would, the discussions that I've had, as I said, that's a reasonable concern. We certainly don't want to send any money back to Washington that we didn't, get it together and spend properly. So, and at this point, there have been requests that we try to get a plan. What would we do with this money if we want to put it toward homeless issues? If what ARPA funds were intended to be at least partially focused on social type issues, make the community better in that fashion. They were not really focused.
Let me ask you a question. Are you talking in addition to the 2, or how much have we put for affordable housing? 2.5? Are you talking?
Madam Mayor.
I'm asking a question. Are you talking? in
Yes,
addition-
but the normal
It's a
procedure,
simple-
you wait till the person is
Well,
done
I'm
with the
asking
floor.
a question. I'm just asking you a question. Mr.
Okay,
Boyd.
could you hold your questions to the end?
Are you talking about in excess of the 2.5 that we already set aside? That's all my question is. And then another million
Yes,
dollars.
it's separate from that.
That's
yes.
my.
Okay. So at this point, I call them cut sheets because that's what I'm used to from industrial processes and things. It's the 1 or 2 page sheets that describe what you're gonna do with a given capital improvement project. We are not in a situation at this point where we have such a thing for $1 million or $2 million for homeless efforts to somehow make our city better in that direction. However, we have had a number of discussions with the county, the community services part, with other organizations. We've had some proposals that are on the table. We have, I think, a fairly decent idea of some of the kinds of things that could help our community in that direction, that $1 million or $1.5 million, something could go toward. Again, coming back to the idea, we absolutely cannot afford to not use them. So my proposal would be that we've talked a little bit about before, is do a set aside at this point, and up to the commission, whether that set aside is $1 million or $2 million or somewhere in between. Set that aside now with the understanding that we got to come up with that cut sheet hard and fast that we can review by the end of October. Why the end of October? Because according to discussions with finance, if we look at that, whatever that program is, or that use of the money, and we say, nah, that's not what we want to do, we still have time to go back to other things and commit it to that if we make that decision by end of October.
That is correct.
Thank you.
That is correct.
We also, but isn't there an alternative plan to relieve that deadline of, remember we talked about funding
That was with the unrestricted funds, where we're gonna do the swap.
unrestricted?
Yes,
Okay.
he's referring to restricted portion.
So,
This is what we have left that we cannot swap with any other product. They have to-
I just want to make sure that if we can't come up with a plan, that we have a plan B that makes sure we don't lose the money. And I'm sure.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
we'll come
that
back
we
to
can
you
do
and do
Right.
an adjustment.
My thoughts on, well, what would you put that money toward? And my thoughts is sort of, it's a continuum. You want something that benefits the whole community. You don't want it to just benefit people who are homeless. You want the community to get some benefit out of that. You also, so you can say, well, $1 million buys a lot of lunches or dinners or showers or whatever. And that's cool. You would give people those benefits, but then you spent the money and it's gone. I think we should lean the spending as much as possible to something that has a lasting benefit. Whether that's building something or doing something that sticks around, or that has a pilot project kind of aspect that collects enough data on it that somebody else, and that has enough promise, that somebody else looks at it and says, wow, you did that for a year, the city funded it, it worked pretty well. Yeah, let's see if we can't help you fund it, do matching funds or whatever in the future. Some way that the investment has a longer term benefit, not just a spend it to spend it. That would be the kind of criteria that I would favor for using.
thank you.
So that is my ask, as I mentioned. Thank you again to Vice Mayor Malego, who has committed numerous times that, yes, that's a reasonable thing to put $1 million towards something like that, to improve our city as a whole.
Okay, thank you. So you were talking about restricted funds for this million or million, whatever.
Correct.
Mr. McCoy is talking about.
Yes.
But currently it's budgeted or set aside or anticipated to use it really all on infrastructure. Am I correct on that?
Correct, that's the suggestion that we could come up with because we're running out of time.
Right.
But again, it's up to the guys to make final decision.
Okay, because, Mike and, I don't think it's, I think that we've had a couple of years to sit here now in August and say we should come up with a program by October, November, when everyone who's interested in this has had almost 3 years to think about it. I think I'm a little concerned about that. So, we always had maybe some kind of program. Well, we always had a long time to think about what kind of program, so something more specific would be helpful. Mr. Diaz, you're up next.
Thank you. I think it is important to remember the community want or ask for those kinds of services. I think that conversation has been had over the years and probably a little painfully slow on what that could look like. But I think, the ask is there and the need is there, but to bring it back to the water. So I want to kind of focus on three things because two of them I know I'm a lot more familiar with than the other, and that's the two wells I'm fairly familiar with, the lift stations. I know, how they work and whatnot. I don't know specifically the condition of ours or the ones that are listed, and so I just maybe it would be beneficial to kind of highlight a couple of things that kind of help you out and say, look, so I'm a little bit surprised that the sewer lift stations are listed as M, just because knowing what our communities are going through with sea level rise and
I
other.
don't mean to interrupt, but do you mind if I chime in on that?
Yeah.
So both of you mentioning it being medium priority. We were given very specific criteria for ranking these projects and the total number was out of 9, I believe. There were 3 separate categories of which utility projects don't necessarily what's the word I'm looking for? In my interpretation, it's not something that was like, oh yeah, this is
Urgent, I think, urgent and public safety was, I don't have the categories in front of me, but public safety and immediate need is what we looked at.
and then there was also like environment and
It was based on the strategic plan.
Okay, and these are things that if we don't address them, will continue to worsen.
correct. So there was
Won't have anything to do.
there was one criteria that was considered in the rankings that was part of the strategic plan that doesn't necessarily align with utility projects. So when I was ranking these, I think I was giving them, 7 out of 9 rather than 9 out of 9 because I didn't feel that it was honest about assigning a 3 urgency to something like whatever the strategic plan category was that doesn't really involve utilities, but they are extremely high priority. I mean, when it comes down to it, it's like these things need to happen. And I understand what you were saying about this seems opportunistic because it absolutely
It
is.
is.
But the only other option besides using this opportunity is to go into more debt.
Right.
Which in turn will raise the rates again. And so it's absolutely opportunistic, but it's
It's an
here.
opportunity. We have an opportunity.
Yeah.
So, but yes, please,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
But
Continue
there's-
the lift stations
Yeah,
questions.
there is another opportunity that we've talked about, but and we'll get to that in a second, but basically you're being always so nice and professional. The goalposts just didn't necessarily, they kind of missed the mark on this one, to be quite frankly, like lift stations and the monitoring wells, it's resilience planning. And to me, when you talk about like public safety, it might not be an immediate College Park's water is gonna be inundated with bacteria, public safety, but for me, over the next coming decades, that system might be compromised because sea level rise and a rising saltwater lens. So I have a different perspective on it. And on the monitoring wells, one of them, to put it bluntly, it's none of our faults, but it was improperly fixed. It was like, there's no nice way to put it. It was half-assed, right? And it just really compromised the well and left you in a bad position. And that needs to be fixed. And then the other well needs to be also fixed because DEP is now breathing down your neck. So these are important things, and I'm happy to see that the ARPA commitment to like the dual zone well has actually gone down since the last meeting, because it was almost double, right? I think it was like 1.4 or something before. So
For the dual zone monitoring well, I literally requested whatever was left.
Yeah.
So, the
you'll
number,
take it,
the
yeah.
number was higher, and then we found out about, I believe it was the lighting project for ball field, and I
Yeah.
said, okay, remove that, and then still whatever's left.
Because that has the immediate safety of somebody's head getting, yeah.
Yes,
Um,
so I said, yes, help yourself, but please,
Again, next
We'll
goal.
take the mayor.
Generous of you.
So,
Because that is like a $5.7 or $8 million project, and we will take what we
Yeah.
can get.
because the other thing, because debt unfortunately looks like what we're gonna be incurring on a lot of this project, but then the other opportunity, and it really puts us in a hard bind because of the ARPA deadlines and legislative session, because I've expressed this in previous meetings and in in other lobbying work, our state, DEP especially, they love funding sewer projects. Well, they love funding conversions at least, and things like ASR wells, they like funding those sort of things, but the schedule is not in our favor.
Operation and maintenance
Yeah.
activities, and they do not like.
And even,
us
and
to maintain.
And even pursuing this money like the session, and yeah, we know there are uncertainty and the timing doesn't work, because what it comes down to is especially it's well 9, right? That has a D, it's like affecting our data, right? It's the
Yes,
DEP.
monitoring well 9, I think they
Yeah.
said there's like saltwater intrusion or something going on there.
And we've gotten, not that we necessarily need a lot of leeway or anything like that, but they've been pretty nice to us in the meantime, but again, the situation gets worse and worse.
And also that is something that is holding us back from being able to construct any additional wells.
Which is necessary for us, the open secret, we're pursuing adding water customers across the lagoon. And these fixes would be pretty critical for that process as well. Would be
Not
really
only that,
helpful.
but start to think about PFAS and all of those things. We want to be able to
Yeah.
have a variety of well sites to be able to kind of pick and choose what our water quality coming into the plant is. So, I mean, there's a lot of really future forward reasons to get that monitoring
Yeah.
well.
And the last note on that, why we need wells is because just consumptive use permits, we see the writing on the wall that in the near future, they're not exactly just giving those out anymore. It's not 20 years ago where every single application, they're starting to realize, hey, Florida has limited fresh water. They're starting to get harder to get. And we're kind of right before that cusp. So I just want to put that out there, the things to consider, but I think it is really important to maintain that, we did commit money to those other services that community is asking for, because we need to make it work, and it's our unfortunate reality every budget season is we have X number of asks and we have Y number of money, and that Y unfortunately is 0.5 of what we actually need. So just wanted to throw that out there for discussion.
Okay.
In trying to plead my case, I know that with the ARPA restriction, it needs to be allocated by December 31st, and we have 3 beautiful, fully
Perfect.
fleshed out projects that would love to be funded.
There was an interesting article in the Post today about West Palm Beach Water, that they're looking to start doing some reverse osmosis and interesting.
Yeah.
This is the Megan has had her line for so long. Do you want to go? Thank you. I see it.
Yeah, I'm just gonna mention real quick. So I pulled up, the actual scoring system, just so everyone's aware. So it's 3 separate categories: impact on public safety or emergency, which is evaluate how the project improves public safety, such as reducing accidents, improving emergency response times, or enhancing public health. The second was community need. Assess the level of need for the project within the community, considering factors like population served, existing infrastructure deficiencies, and community feedback. And the third and final one was environmental impact. Evaluate the potential environmental impact of the project, considering factors like resource use, emissions, and sustainable practice. So that's how every single project that you're seeing in here was scored in each one of those categories. 1, 2, or 3.
I think I was overthinking it a little bit in the sense of, does our community want and need lift station? It's just kind of like they don't know they do, but
they'll know it when they don't have whether they.
yes, so they are high priority projects.
I, Ms. Mullin.
Thank you. Thank you for your hard work. Yes, I did make a statement months ago about trying to get counterpart to reconsider a certain amount of money for public services, for social services, I should say. But in light that we have put 2.5 million towards housing, 150,000 went to affordable, adopt a family, and another 50,000 went to legal aid. In conjunction with the hub and everything we do with Habitat and community partners, there is a real need in the city, and it's for us to take care of our infrastructure that's been ignored for many, 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 many decades. And after I made that statement of $1 million, I got many emails from residents who they deserve to have their streets and their waterways and their infrastructure taken care of. They're the ones who contribute to the city. They're the ones who've been waiting patiently. And when we go out to bond and when we say we gotta raise your rates and when we gotta, the residents have been there for us and I've heard it loud and clear. So I'm 100% support of all of these projects through ARPA, through the restricted funds, and I give consensus on my end. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boyd, if we can, we're already at almost 6 o'clock, so let's keep it moving. Everybody.
Thank you for your preface, Madam Mayor. Couple things. Is the dual zone monitoring well, that's building the well, that's the roughly 5 million, right?
It's design and construction of a replacement for our dual zone monitoring.
So that's not really an operating expense, that's more capital, that's why it's in this list, in the capital. So and I'm very uncomfortable being in a position of lobbying against things that I firmly believe in, and I fully believe what you say as far as we're gonna need to do these, whether we need to do it tomorrow or 2 years from now. Yeah, you can argue about that, but we clearly need to do them at some point. But the monitoring well, I would say, is not an operating expense. It's a construction, it's a capital improvement. So that puts it back closer to something that we might be able to go back to the state legislature. We'd have a shot at that. If we're saying, hey, we want money to run our water plant, well, they're gonna say, yeah, forget it. That's operating. That's clearly not things we fund. This is something that we might. So that's something to add into the mix as we think about it. I hear the concern about funding things with debt. You've heard me express it with the electric utilities. We're borrowing on the order of, I forget what the total number is, but it's well over 100 million. And that's how you do expensive stuff that needs expensive infrastructure, is you borrow it. And the argument, which makes some sense to me, of in favor of borrowing is intentional, that you say, well, those costs and the benefits of whatever that is that you're doing in the way of infrastructure is going to give a benefit over a lifetime, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, whatever it is. And the cost of doing that, achieving that benefit should be spread over multiple years so that it isn't just the people here now who are funding it, it's spread over years. I think there's some logic to that argument. I don't particularly like going into debt, but there is a good reason to. These would be things that we could fund, take $1 million out and add that to our bonding. There's nothing that says the bond has to be exactly this number. It could be this number and $1 million higher. If we were to go to the bond agencies and say, we'd like to borrow $1 million to do something for homeless, yeah, that wouldn't fly. That's not an option. I'm seeing the finance director agree with me on that. It's not an option. So we need to be very conscious here as a commission that we have heard from the community on multiple occasions. Oh my God, we have a horrible homeless problem. In fact, some people campaigned on that issue and said, we have a horrible homeless problem and we have to do something. This is our time to set aside the money. $1 million is not very much. We've had confirmation today from the county, it's been an ongoing discussion, that yes, they have some concrete things, and yes, they could use contributions from the cities. So there is a need for it. It's squishier. It's much easier to give a cut sheet for something engineering than it is to do something for social services. That doesn't mean that the need in the community is, they're both needs. They're both valid needs. One of them has alternate ways of funding it. One of them doesn't. That's where I would say out of the 20 million to set aside roughly 5% for social services, which is what the money from the feds was intended for, is not an unreasonable ask of us as a community. And it would be following through on campaign promises and what we have heard from the community.
Thank you. I think in light of what Ms. Malega just pointed out, we have put aside 2.5 million. We can take some of that for homeless problem. You know, whenever I go to a meeting for the county or FLC, we are the leaders in finding affordable housing. Our CRA in our city has partnered with so many people. We're like a shining star about that. So I think if we can take some of that money towards, yeah, and so that's one thing I'm gonna say. I'm gonna ask for consensus and I'm gonna end the discussion with myself. That, you know, again, it's been 3 years. No one has said, here's a program, it'll cost this. And, you know, at this point in time, we should have a program for homeless.
Actually,
people.
that's a
I'm
false
sorry,
statement.
this is
No, no,
not,
you
Mr.
interrupted me. It's a
Mr.
false
McBoy,
statement.
please stop.
It's a false statement. We
Mr.
have
McBoy,
that
please stop.
conversation.
What, and no direct
Yes, we
suggestion.
have.
So, I'm gonna call for consensus for the spending for the approval of, you know, pro or con. If someone would, I'm asking for consensus to fund the water projects, which are things that are, it's all, delayed maintenance. It's a one-time opportunity. It is an opportunity. And I believe that for the sake of all the people in the city who drink our water deserve that. So I'm gonna ask for consensus on that. Ms. Malega?
Yes.
Mr. McBoy?
No,
Ms. May?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Just to clarify, we're not deciding on spending, this is to clarify to get this in for discussion on the public hearing. I'm asking what your
This is-
consensus, because this is a
This would,
workshop. so.
this would approve, this would get consensus to approve, then it will go to the first hearing and that'd be the final approval of the
Right.
capital plan.
And then at the hearing is where we discuss to make a decision, right?
No, not really. This is where we have to.
We're trying to make a
No,
decision
actually,
now.
yeah, actually, at the hearing is the
Final.
that's the decision before the final one, which is the second hearing. So before it goes to the second hearing, it needs to be approved in the first hearing.
Right, because this is a
This
workshop.
is a workshop.
We're not,
So you're giving us consensus so that we can prepare the documents for you for the first hearing as far as where the funding is coming from.
right, and that
Yes.
wouldn't preclude preparing documents to discuss the, like, other options of the setting aside $1 million.
Absolutely. You
Right.
You can have time for that. We can always have that discussion and then
Well-
that will prep us for the second.
But if we don't, if we're sitting here, there's three of us, that's a waste of staff's time. If we already said there's three of us who are.
If there's a consensus, then
We-
we will just have to.
Well,
follow that.
I'm trying to, you know, just be careful here because we've had multiple discussions on what's the difference between a workshop and a meeting and actual, and I mean, because if we sit here in a workshop and we can vote right now on deciding what specifically and how we're gonna spend money and then just make that the final decision, then remind me again why have a public hearing? So there's a reason why we separate the two, so I think to
I
that
think
point.
Mr. Finance Director.
So
would you explain
the
it?
consensus is, again, is for us to have,
Bring it to hearing.
exactly, have the document with the approval of where the funding is coming from for those specific projects.
And
I-
historically, they're
Just like we
very
did with the
quick
library
meetings.
fund, we started with that, we all
Correct.
gave consensus, we're
That'll
gonna
be,
put it in there.
that will be included in the budget.
And so, and that's kind of what I'm pointing out is that, you know, we can agree to have this document for hearing, just like we can agree to have a document on setting $1 million aside for services, and then, you know, that's kind of the purpose of the hearing, is to look at the two alternatives and to see and to decide there, right? Because this
Yes.
is a workshop.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Well,
technically-
Yannick
I
is.
mean, you have the authority, I mean,
I'm gonna.
I don't have the city
we have-
attorney.
All right, we have consensus at this point from at least three of us. I don't know about Mr. Diaz, to go forward with these projects. And I think that's the end of that. I don't know where you're gonna vote on that one, Mr. Diaz.
Sure, you know, you can end it on that.
Where do you stand?
You have the 3 votes, so it really doesn't matter, because my understanding of this vote is that we're not deciding specifically right now, putting a hard line on this, how we're spending money, we're bringing this to public hearing, but I see your city manager has.
Well, that's why we have workshops, to give staff the direction, so they're not chasing their tail
All
and
right,
rerunning
let's
these numbers five different
we're
ways.
becoming a little free form here. I see Mr. Brown's light is on. And then we're gonna move on.
Good evening. So yeah, so ideally, the point of the budget workshops is to not actually voting, you know, we're getting consensus from all of you. So we know when we come to the actual budget hearings, because we have to have a first and second hearing to actually adopt the budget in September. Ideally, in a perfect world, when we enter budget or the public hearing number 1, we would have already incorporated everything we've gotten from you guys in the first budget workshops. So the hearing should just be approving what you guys have already come to consensus on and not actually making a lot of changes to the budget at that point in time. So not that we're taking actual votes tonight, it's just we're trying to gain consensus as to what should be included in public hearing number 1. So by the time you get to that public hearing, there are no surprises, everyone knows what is going to be included, and we're just taking direction from everyone. So that's the main.
Okay. What's next?
That actually concludes what we have to present, and that will conclude our, requests and recommendations, and then we will, reconvene on September 12th unless, Mr. Brown or Mr. Perry or.
On another meeting?
We have the first public hearing coming up September 12th,
Right.
but that's the.
And all of us can come to a specific, I have a couple little questions I can ask, but, okay.
Yes.
In Madam Mayor, I did want to just ask as well, since that last meeting did go pretty long and I was getting kind of tired. I know, Commissioner May, you had some questions on the fee schedule before. I just wanted to bring up, is there any questions as far as anything we have already covered? Whether it's fee schedule related, whether it's CIP, whether it's operating budget, anything that maybe came to mind after, one of those first two
Quickly, yeah.
workshops?
Ms. May?
I just have a logistical question regarding funding. So if there is any way to get a referendum for road bond on March,
Short answer.
okay, do we have to do another one of the CPI studies?
Correct. So what is going to be included in the budget is an update for overall citywide infrastructure. That is going to be step 1 of that process. And then basically laying out an updated infrastructure master plan. So based off of the upgraded paving condition indexes for all of our roads, incorporating all of the projects that have happened since then, updating all of those roadways, then getting with Vaughn. Not in right now.
But you ran away.
Because we have to coordinate all of the utility projects that she has upcoming in the next 5 years to make sure that we're not going to be addressing roadways that have.
Do we have funding for that study?
Yes.
Yes, that's included in the CIP.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure. That's what we have to do first, and that's already funded. After that, then we can go.
Correct, and then it's just a
from
matter
there.
of coordination with the water, sewer, and stormwater utility.
Yeah,
To put together just like we did in the first round
Yeah.
of the bond program, I'll put together an overall plan of how this is going to look. And then come up with the actual dollar amount that we
okay,
need to be going for, and then bringing everything to all of you. And then determining if that's something we actually want to move forward with, then staff is gonna have to get busy putting together this overall program. And putting together an actual,
and I know that we have a lot of other projects going on now. I just wanted to make sure that the funding for the study part, because you always say you can't do anything without a study. I want that part done.
correct. And then obviously there is an extensive public outreach component to anything.
I understand. I just don't want it to be 10 years from now. Like, divide that by 5.
And realistically, that would be something that would be going forward in 26, so not this upcoming March, but the following year. While the city does not have an election that year, the last time that there was a referendum, we had 3 different ballot questions on, but there were actually no city elections that year.
Okay,
So it'd be on for 26, because there are county one.
okay, excellent. Thank you.
Do you have a motion? Do we need a motion? Good night.
You do not.
Thanks, everybody, for being here.